Hi, I'm Hilary Russo. Thanks for joining me for the HIListically Speaking podcast. I'm a certified holistic health coach and havening techniques practitioner, lover of great conversation, and of course, clever wordplay, HIListically speaking. So welcome to an empowering place where my guests share their transformational stories of trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor. It's the ultimate brain candy as we find out who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. And be kind to your mind. I'm glad you're here. So a girl walks into a bar. There's no joke here. That's pretty much how my journey with havening began. I was actually attending a 50th birthday party for a friend some years ago when I met Feliciana. We chatted for a while and asked each other that common question when you meet someone. So what do you do? And I told her about my journey into holistic health as a coach, my New York City life and TV. And then she proceeded to tell me what she does and asked me if she could just show me. Havening. What's that? Well, it's a psychosensory approach which alters the landscape of the brain, and it can permanently remove the negative effects of traumatization and pathologically stuck emotions that we often feel. Whoa, sign me up. Who doesn't want to feel better? So, it's no secret that touch is vital to human connection and emotions. The first moment we're placed in our mother's arms, a warm hug, a firm handshake, a gentle touch on the face or the shoulder. You can imagine the introduction to this breakthrough method intrigued me. So there I was in the middle of a Manhattan bar with this kind voice talking to me as she gently stroked my arms and my hands. And I suddenly felt a sense of calm, like I had found my best friend. It was beautiful. And it was maybe about a month later, I'm at a 2-day workshop to learn more. I even volunteered to be havened on the loss of my father, which was, up until that point, rather painful to even talk about. So there I was on stage in front of a group of strangers, experiencing a havening session with one of the creators and developers, Dr. Ruden, while his twin brother, havening's other founder, Dr. Steve Ruden, looked on with a smile. I felt in that moment I was in, no pun intended, good hands. I had no idea how long I was on that stage, but something happened to me in that moment, and that was it. I knew this modality was a must in my professional practice and in my personal life. It has helped me with chronic pain from TMJ surgery, recovery from a narcissistic abusive relationship, anxiousness, stress, everyday upsets, like that one time I was in the security line at Charles de Gaulle Airport for 2.5 hours with nothing to do but haven. Yeah, the possibilities are endless. And here we are. You hear me talk about havening a lot on HIListically Speaking, not only as a certified practitioner, but also someone who uses it in my daily life. But hearing the story behind this gift is really what you're about to experience. And that's where Dr. Steve steps in. So on this episode of HIListically Speaking, you'll find out how this neuroscience-based approach came to be as Dr. Steve Ruden shares the story behind havening, how we're entering into a new paradigm to active well-being for people of all ages, including children. And make sure you stick around for a guided self-havening session with the doctor himself. Plus, a chance to join us for a worldwide event to help you be kind to your mind. Dr. Steve Ruden, thank you so much for joining me on HIListically Speaking. You are a mentor, you are a friend, and I've learned so much from you over the years just in my whole process of becoming a havening techniques practitioner. And who better to talk about it than either yourself or your brother, Ron Ruden, both of you being doctors and developing this unbelievable tool to help people on their healing journeys. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Hilary.
You know, I talk about havening a lot, as you know. I'm a huge advocate in addition to being a practitioner, in addition to using it myself. And having you here to talk about really the background and the story behind havening is something that I don't think people get to hear often, unless they know who you are, they're interested in neuroscience or brain health. But as we know, both as people who are in this line of work, a lot of times people just want to know, how do I feel better? How do I heal? Maybe I don't want to know about all the neuroscience, but help me find a way to where I can feel better. So how did this come about?
That's a great story. And it all started one spring day in Central Park, New York, when my brother Ron was walking through the park with his friend, Dr. Paul McKenna. And Dr. Paul McKenna said, "Have you ever heard of something called tapping?" My brother goes, "No." This was about 2003. So Dr. McKenna said, "Well, why don't you look this up?" His name is Dr. Roger Callahan, and he wrote a book called Tapping the Healer Within. So my brother went out and bought the book, and he brings the book to the office, and he's reading through it, and it said, you know, uh, this tapping process can cure phobias. So my brother calls in one of his other docs into his room and says, "Just by the way, do you have a phobia?" And she said, "Funny you should ask." And she said, "I have a horrible cat phobia." And my brother goes, "Well, that's interesting. Would you like to get rid of it?" And she said, "Absolutely." So he put the book on his lap, he followed the instructions, and lo and behold, the phobia disappeared, much to his surprise. And he called me up that day and said, "Guess what? I got rid of a phobia by tapping on somebody." Now, my brother and I have done many projects together. You can imagine birthing being one of them. and over the years, we followed with many other projects. So at that moment, we began the investigation as to how this works. Because at
Mm.
the end of the day, my brother and I are just curious people. I wonder what happens if is a mantra we kind of live by. So we went to the literature and looked around, and lo and behold, no one knew what was happening. There was a big empty space. Well, my brother Ron, who's not only is he an MD, he's also a PhD in organic chemistry out of Northwestern,
Mm.
said maybe we should investigate how this works. And then from about 2003 to about 2008, Ron and I spoke every night for 3 to 4 hours on things he read. We discussed them, we turned them inside out, and thought about them. Now,
Mm.
all this was well and good till about 3 years into the process. And we realized that what we were seeing clinically did not align in what we were seeing in the literature or what we thought we were seeing in the literature. And the reason for that is we were looking at this um, ability to change mental constructs as a Pavlovian issue. That means it's in long-term memory. And all of our work along that way was trying to understand the process of modulating long-term memory to make it go in another direction. But what we were seeing clinically was that the memory altered in a matter of minutes. And we knew from the literature that long term memory takes 45 minutes at least, sometimes even hours to alter. So we really started to sweat. Like, this is not good, that what we're thinking and what we're seeing are not the same. So we gently tore up all the work we did in the last few years and realized that the concerns that we were searching for lie elsewhere. Now, of course, no one knew where that was. And truthfully, the psychotherapeutic world today is working with the neocortex, the new brain. It uses approaches, techniques, and ideas that try to change the way the neocortex, the new brain, works. But what we found in our discovery of what happens, why things happen rapidly, is that it wasn't held actually in the neocortex. It was held in the limbic system. And actually, not only in the limbic system, but in a very specific place in the limbic system called the lateral nucleus. And uh, from there, we were able to backtrack what is happening in the lateral nucleus and what was the literature about. And then we discovered the fact that under stressful conditions, something happens called AMPAR receptors on the lateral nucleus of the amygdala. And those are excitatory receptors. That means that they make things happen very quickly. So we postulated that these AMPAR receptors was the on-ramp to the downstream expression of stimuli that was similar to the initial sensitizing event. And when there were things that were similar or identical to that event, the brain set off a cascade of events that cause stress hormones to be released and therefore recapitulate that moment and prepare us for fight or flight, even though the situation was no longer dangerous.
There's a story that you tell just in that, and when I hear you speak, I feel like you're taking us on this journey, right? Because a lot of times people don't really understand, and we're still trying to understand the brain even more, right? You being a dentist working in the field of dentistry and surgery, and your brother being an internal medicine doctor, both of you in the field of medicine, but
We're in the
not.
people field.
You're in the people field,
Right.
right? Like, how do we serve others, right? And when we realize the mind over matter, how much our thoughts do matter, what we're thinking, how it can change the way, it's holding space for us to think differently. I mean, no pun intended, right?
What happened was medicine began to develop a set of understandings in what the client or patient presented. And that was by the use of symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And the symptoms then became the cause celeb of what we are going to do to treat. So if you have a headache, we'll give you something for the headache. If you have XYZ, we will treat the XYZ. However, the fatal flaw was, now, don't get me wrong, medicine is fabulous. It has
Mm-hmm.
saved millions of lives. I think at the outset, modern medicine is amazing. But we're entering into a new paradigm, not only of disease,
Mm-hmm.
but of approaches to well-being, active well-being.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so where the paradigm that's shifting is this. Medicine has been great in solving problems that were external to us and even internal to us,
Mm-hmm.
either via, if we had bacteria, we had antibiotics. If we had certain things, we had medications to mitigate diabetes or whatever the case may be. And so we became symptom driven. But the question arises is, what causes the symptom to arise in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And that is where current neuroscience is beginning to uncover these mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And Havening is one of the first, if not the first, that is using these new neuroscientific understandings to treat not the symptom, but the root cause of the problem, and thus allow the symptom to disappear because it is no longer needed.
I love sharing that with clients as well, and I'm sure you do too, because knowing that I'm treated more than just being a symptom, but a human being that has the ability to heal myself in certain circumstances, or be able to, make it part of my process. I mean, when I first came to the Havening workshop, the 2-day workshop, before I knew if I was going to pursue this forward, I was havened on stage by Dr. Ron over a traumatic event. And then I was havened on my TMJ. And since then, I mean, it was, even people were saying that day that I was walking taller. It felt like there was a ton that was released from my shoulders. And I knew then, I'm like, I need to share this because yes, modern medicine is wonderful. Yes, there's a purpose for it and a need for it. And we're so fortunate that we keep advancing and finding new ways of healing and helping people. But when we give people the tools to put into their own hands to take care of, to start within, that's a really powerful tool to offer people, right? And that's where I think Havening really, really touched me. When I saw what it did for me with something I was holding on to for so long, I knew I wanted to share it with other people. And I'm so grateful for it, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah. I think the question that I've gotten a lot, and so maybe I'm just going to throw out some questions that I get as a practitioner, is the difference, and because you brought it up, between tapping and havening.
We don't know for sure. There may be some similarities in the underlying science, but they have never elucidated what their underlying model is. I think that havening is simpler. It's easier to apply. It's rapid. It's safe. I think it can be easily taught. I think it can be easily learned. You don't need complicated ideas, but the idea of using our mind body issue as a therapeutic tool, and specifically touch as our change agent, and thus using delta waves, which are generated by the havening touch, as our change agent, is a novel approach to well-being and healing. And just understand there's a big difference in the word healing and treating. So understand that treating means that we're taking something from the outside and then giving it to you. Healing means that the circumstance is an inside ourselves thing.
It's an
So
inside job.
right, it's an inside job, and our bodies were designed. We didn't have doctors in caveman time. So what we needed to do, if I cut myself, I didn't have to call the ER or go to a emergency care. My brain knew how to stop the bleeding and cover that wound and grow new skin. So it was thought that at really as early as just the turn of the 21st century, that the brain was immutable. It was not changeable. Once it was that way, it was that way. But current neuroscience showing is the brain is highly plastic, highly flexible. So how do we use that flexibility, and what are the tools that allow us to engage that flexibility to make change permanent in our mind and body?
What's interesting that you just said that it's resonating with me is the term healing. I think the term healer is used a lot this day and age, people that say that they're healing others. And I'm always the first, I always say to others, I'm not healing you. I'm giving you the tools to heal yourself. I'm merely the hardware store in a way. You're coming, you're shopping. Oh, you want to try this? You want to try that? I'll show you how to use it and then use it, And I think that's an empowering tool that we're giving people, like I said before, to let them know that we heal ourselves. I know it helped me to understand that I have the power to eliminate the
Change.
chronic pain. Yeah.
Change.
And just the change and alter in the state of my mind when I'm not in a good place, and how easy it is to just feel better. And that is such a beautiful thing about havening, is that you can be in a really crappy place 1 minute, and in just a short self-havening session, short self-havening 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it can really change the trajectory of things. And it's almost, to some, I know it, for me, the first time, you're almost looking around for the thing that was bothering you.
Right.
You're looking for the upset. You're looking, how come this isn't affecting me like this anymore? Why aren't I feeling that? And you almost are holding on to what you're so used to having. The beautiful thing is that you have the ability to let go, right?
Want to get a little geeky? Want to get a little
Yeah.
geeky? How geeky? We'll get a little geeky. We'll get a little geeky.
Just a little bit.
So what's interesting is when on a molecular level, when there is a potential threatening situation, the amygdala and something called the hippocampus go into theta resonance. That means they're operating both in theta. That allows for the memory to be have a high vivid quality to it, and the amygdala to remember it when it gets stimuli from the external world. So there is a coherence between the amygdala and the hippocampus that occurs. And what's interesting is in havening, when you go into the havening session and you create that same space that allows the person to reimagine that, it activates theta in that amygdala hippocampus space, and then you can go in there and remove it. So those initial encoding areas now become susceptible to removal. It really, so, and it's a lot more complicated than that. Sure. But it just shows you that how something is put in, it also could be taken out in the same way.
Powerful. When you're talking about the amygdala, we call her Amy in the havening world, right? Yeah. What I love about that is that, and I know Dr. Kate Truitt talks about this too, being CPR for the amygdala is her thing. Amy giving her that feminine, and how I express it with clients is that if we're treating her like when we have a baby, that baby's put in our arms, we nurture that baby. We're doing everything we can to let that child, that being that relies solely on us, know that they're okay. It's okay. I've got you, which is basically like Amy, the havening. And the whole idea where I see a difference also going back to tapping, and this was something that was brought to my attention by somebody who I had a conversation with on their summit, is that tapping tends to be a little more masculine in that it's the constant tap, whereas havening has a more feminine, which aligns really well with the whole nurturing of Amy and making Amy feel safe. And I find that to be really beautiful when I think about havening. It's kind of a dance to protect the amygdala,
Well, that's the fundamental premise, that when a newborn is held, the mother's presence and the touch of the mother induces delta waves in the baby that alerts the system that you're safe, that you're not abandoned. So all of the work in the construct of havening touch really floats back to that extremely momentous moment where the mother picks up the child and the child feels safe. And it really expresses itself all through our society. That touch is really the great communicator. And don't forget, languaging is a very latecomer to our experience. So touch and facial expressions and the way we communicate is much more profound an indicator of how we're doing than maybe our words.
Oh, absolutely. And just the fact that this last year alone in this pandemic, we've been so void of touch, and there have been so many people that have been struggling and just not being able to hold someone or just hug someone, being able to know that you can do a self hug, being able to know that we have the tools to just nurture ourselves, which is really where we need to go with the nurturing first and foremost, right? How can we be powerful out there in the world when we're not even nurturing, or as I always say, be kind to your mind, right? And that is just, it's so important. And the beauty of this is that it is a tool that we can give others to do to themselves, where not every modality has that, you know? So it's a gift. It's a gift.
I think at the end of the day, when Ron and I were very early on, we were looking at things. We were enthralled with the construct that we were able to remove trauma. But I think at the end of the day, I think the long-term benefit will be about self-havening and self-regulation.
Mm.
That could be scaled into the millions very easily.
Yeah, we're doing some really amazing things. Like recently, when we just did the sing along, was
Yeah.
really beautiful. And knowing that we are going to be able to reach children. I've always been a firm believer that there should be meditation in school instead of the timeouts and the detention. And imagine what a child can do with a moment of meditation or mindfulness rather than sit over there and think about what you did. Rather, sit over there and think about what you want to create, what you want to be, how you are.
The object of havening fundamentally is to create a space between stimuli and response
Mm.
to allow us to make the best decisions. Many of us don't have that space. We have no
Mm.
experience with that space. So our response is more reactive.
Mm.
What havening does is it creates the space for kindness, for generosity, for reflection, for understanding. So it is a matter of not only informing our bodies and our minds that we don't have to respond immediately, but gives us time to be thoughtful about it as well.
It's beautiful. And haven in itself means a safe place.
Absolutely.
Was it easy to just come up with the name when you were thinking about it with Dr. Ron?
Um,
It's kind of a no-brainer, no pun intended.
I, I, there was a lot of discussion about it.
Yeah,
We thought about amygdala depotentiation therapy
right.
techniques and there, but here was my feeling about it at the end of the day. I said, look, if the Beatles can become the best known band in the world with a name like a beetle, whatever we call it, if it works, is going to be just fine.
That's right.
And then Ron said, let's call it havening. And I just said, great.
I don't know. I think it works. What do you think?
I think people, just like anything else, it's like the name of the group is the Beatles,
Yeah.
But after a while, if there is efficacy and things that work out well, but these conversations actually happen, by the way, Hilary.
Yeah, and I would imagine they would. And by the way, for those who don't know, listeners, Dr. Steve and Dr. Ron Ruden are twins. So you guys spent a lot of time together. Like you said, you started out, your first project was just coming out of the womb, right?
Right.
So you've been working together for a very long time.
Yep.
And here you are, at this phase of your lives where you're working on something even more, where you're truly giving back, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of conversations about this over a decade to build havening, wasn't it?
2 decades.
2 decades, 2 decades. And you actually, both of you being published authors, and you focused on dental phobia, which I think is huge. I mean, people really fear going to the dentist. I have to say I'm not one of those people. I love going to my dentist, by the way. But there are those fears. You hear the tools coming at you. You see bright lights when you're going to the doctor. You're sitting on a cold table. Those kind of things can really impact somebody. And I've seen how havening has helped people with upsets and fears, overcoming circumstances, overcoming just different things in their lives, whether it's just being activated and having, smaller upsets throughout the day. But there is a true benefit to this, and that is the trauma encoding, which to me, Dr. Steve, I think a lot of times the word trauma is thrown around a lot. And we hear that there's a lot of people out there that handle trauma, deal with trauma. But as I learned in havening, there have to be 4 elements for something to be a trauma, right?
Well, first of all, I don't use the word trauma.
Why is that?
Because it's too unclear. The construct is an event-specific biologic marker.
Mm.
So if you have an event that contains the elements that allow an encoding to occur, an event-specific biologic marker is then placed in the limbic system. So we don't use I don't believe in the word trauma. I think it's a bad word. In fact, trauma is Greek for wound. And in fact, what the brain did was not a wound, it was acting properly to preserve the organism by creating an experience that will prevent you from having that potential threatening event to pass your way again. So understand that the whole construct that is surfaced around trauma is misguided.
So when we talk about it in the havening world, that there have to be the four things present for trauma and coding, how is that different? Is that something that you're still kind of?
That's so the fourth thing. And this is an interesting also backstory. I remember very clearly writing the four elements and
Mhm,
encoding moment on a piece of paper in my kitchen. And they are: the event has to be a certain way.
mhm,
Your feelings at the moment have to be a certain way. The meaning had to have some form of attachment
mhm,
involved, and the circumstance had to be sensed as inevitable or
mhm,
inescapable. And once you put those elements together, the brain lays down an event specific biologic marker, which is rapidly accessible to other stimuli that come into your system to help you recognize that a threat is upon you. So throw out the word trauma. I think it's a bad word. I
mm.
know everybody's wedded to it, but I'll say it here and now. I think that we need to think about it more in terms of neuroscientific terms rather than psychological terms, neurobiological terms rather than psychological terms.
I find that very interesting that you're saying that. I really do, because I feel like we've been learning so much about trauma and coding within the havening world. That is this just from your own learning and experiences that you're starting to think this way?
I would say that this construct that I'm working on now is probably
Yeah.
about 8 months old.
Okay.
It's
See what
relative,
happens when you're in a pandemic?
yeah, about 8 months old.
Wow, okay. So we could see further developments, as things always are works in progress, right?
Right.
It could change for us, which is why I love the continued support we get within this community as practitioners. Is that it's not just you get a certification and you're done. And I know there are people out there that in various modalities and in coaching and practitioner work where there's no further of education. And for me, I love that we're constantly learning something and we're around other practitioners. And it really is a family in my mind. And we learn from others and we share with others so that we can be better practitioners and explore the newness that comes before us, like you're mentioning right now. I would have never thought you would have said that. So I'm really interested to see what happens.
Well, let's take the construct of community for a moment and then apply it to another word that's commonly used,
Okay.
and that's resilience.
Yes.
So really, resilience, when one thinks about it, is the ability to return to homeostasis,
Mm.
to baseline. And where is your homeostasis? Is when you're in a safe haven. So community allows us to explore out into the world, and family allow us to explore out into the world and test our boundaries because we know we can come back to our safe place, which is our community and our family. And
Mm.
with that understanding that we can return ourselves to homeostasis allows us to explore and expand and build those neural tracks to allow us to become more creative, more curious, more inventive down the line. So, and at the end of the day, it increases our resilience. And
Oh, I
people,
love that word.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so it is the construct of family that allows us to create the resilience that we see in our lifetime.
Did you ever think havening would be what it is today when you look back on when you and Dr. Ron first started really toying around with different ideas?
There's one thing to having a good idea, and there's another thing to bringing it out into the world.
Yeah.
So really, our philosophy or the construct of our community is a construct of pay it forward, just like you're doing here today.
Yeah.
And I think if we look at any innovative issue that comes along, it's not the originators of the idea, it's the pay it forward contract. Even if you look at Apple and Steve Jobs and how he gave the ideas to create things that are beautiful and functional and amazing, it was the pay it, they all want to pay it forward to create something better that they recognize. So as we see in this new virtual world, we can set up an organization that everyone is trying to pay it forward, not only for the rest of the world, but for themselves as well, because we all get benefit back to us by us expanding and sharing what we know.
Oh, that's so true. I couldn't you couldn't have said it any better. I think of that, like, I feel like I've had a number of shifts in my life, and I've witnessed that even with the people I've been around, and to see that happen where you realize we're really here for the reason of sharing what you said before, the kindness and the resilience, and that's really what it's all about, you know? And it's beautiful to see that happening and seeing that shift within yourself, especially if you're aware, right? And seeing that to people in people around you that maybe were struggling or having difficulty, you see them get their shine back, you know? So I guess in saying that, when you look back on the last 2 decades with Havening and seeing where you are now, can you kind of see forward with the legacy of where it could go? Like,
We have we have dreams, and we ultimately, it's funny. A while ago, we want to make havening as commonplace as CPR, and it should be in all the schools. In fact, as you know, we're partnering with the Choose Love movement to put havening in 10,000 schools all over the world for children, just to have small little, and we'll do that today at the end of our session, a small little mantra that we'll share with the children to help them create the space to have a great day, become more centered.
absolutely.
It's the object of allowing our systems to remain contained yet flexible.
Yeah. I've actually been using Havening in the college classroom because, as you know, I'm also a college professor, university professor at St. John's, and since I teach on-camera presentation and broadcasting, one of the big things I come face to face with is either the anxiety of test taking or just college life in general, but also the public speaking element. So instead of doing what I used to just do, was just vocal exercises, breathing, little mindfulness, I have them do the havening, and it is quite powerful. And now they just use it because I'll tell you, this generation, the 20 somethings, the 18, 22-year-olds, are really more in touch with mental health than I remember ever being when I was in college. We didn't talk about it, you know? And now I just feel like they're embracing it more and they want to do better and be better and heal on their own, you know? So being able to give it to the younger generation, like we're doing with all the schools, which is so unbelievable. And then as they get older in their school years, they become so much more powerful and mindful as adults, you know, resilient, as we were saying. So we have this conference coming up. I want to mention that because for the first time, the Havening conference is not just open to practitioners, but they're opening it up to just the general public coming and seeing these phenomenal speakers, which every year just keeps getting better. And what would you like to share about that?
Come to the conference, come to the conference, change your life.
I like that. Simple.
Come to the conference, change your life. We're going to have Dr. Daniel Amen, Dr. Paul McKenna, Dr. Gabor Mate, Judith Prager, I know I'm going to forget someone.
And Judith was actually a guest on my podcast as well.
Right.
She's amazing with verbal first aid,
Mm.
Oh, there's so many amazing people covering different areas. So
We have a whole program of midwifery and birthing and children and first responders and crisis intervention and education. And we're going to have Scarlett Lewis, the founder of Choose Love Movement, talk how they're going to incorporate Havening into their social emotional learning. So what's happening, and Dr. Kate Truitt is going to talk about her research projects. So many things are unfolding, not because I am doing anything except allowing the space for people to pay it forward.
Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward to the days that we're back in the room together. I miss going to the city, to New York City, and going to the meetups every month. And I miss, I wanted so much to be, as many of us did, be in the room at the conference last year. But those days will happen. But being able to share it on a virtual level is exactly what's supposed to happen right now. This we've been in this pandemic for over a year. We're just starting to see progress and changes where we're able to get out more. But I think if anything I've learned from this pandemic is how to support people on a whole different level, and the fact that we're able to do that, we're learning as we go. And now this tool is offered to people virtually is so empowering.
We
Gives me
got
chills.
we got kicked out of the tree. We, in the virtual world, we got kicked out of the tree and into the virtual world in
Yeah.
March of last year.
Crazy. So I like to play a game with my guests, and I know you're a fun guy, right? You
Okay.
are. So what I want to do, and this is quick thinking, we're going to do a little word association. I'm going to throw out a word from things we've been talking about today, and I just want you to come back with the first word that comes to mind as quick as possible. Let's see what's on Dr. Steve's mind.
Okay.
Yeah. You ready?
Sure.
Here we go. You don't need to Haven before this, do you?
No.
Okay. All right. Brain.
Brain, Mindy, mind, body.
Nice. Healing.
Insumatak. Insumatak is an ancient Inuit shaman that used to hold the space for people to reveal their truths and allow them to heal.
Haven.
Safe.
Touch.
Human.
Twins.
Funny.
Careful.
Funny.
Yes, you
Funny.
both are. Neuroscience.
Interesting.
Resilience.
Vital.
And amygdala.
Our best friend.
Yeah, we love Amy, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, because we love Amy so much, do you want to lead in a short self-havening session? Just moment, rather?
Oh,
Just
that's a great idea, Hilary.
what a wonderful idea. I can't believe I thought of that.
That's great. So, to your audience, what I'd like you all to do is just find yourself a comfortable place. We'll do this for about 2 minutes, so it's not going to take all that long. But I want you just to sit in your chair comfortably and allow your shoulders to relax. Great. Wet your lips and allow your teeth to gently separate. Great. Take another deep breath and float back to a moment and let your eyelids gently close and float back to a moment when someone was very kind to you, a person that you respected. And I want you to begin just gently taking your hands and placing them at the top of your shoulders and gently stroking them down to your elbows. So cross your arms and bring it up to the top of your shoulders in a very nice cadence. Just gently go there. And I want you to imagine this person's face who is kind and loving to you, and that they recognized within you those qualities that you felt were also wonderful. Maybe it was your kindness. Maybe it was your intelligence. Maybe it was your quick wit. Maybe it was your curiosity. Maybe it was your openness to engage, your gratitude of everything around us. Whatever it is, I just want you to allow that feeling of what that person was able to share with you at that moment and bathe yourselves in that feeling. And know that that is who you are at your core. And maybe there are a few words that may come to your mind. You don't have to speak them out loud if you wish you may. That you feel that represents those feelings about yourself. Great. Just keep on imagining this person, feeling yourself bathed in those really good hormones that just help you recognize that just doing good makes you feel good. Good. Take another deep breath. Great. Allow your shoulders to rest even more. And whenever you're ready, you could just allow your eyelids to gently open. Great.
You know what the best thing is about doing this podcast? I just got a one-on-one session with Dr. Steve Ruden. And I shared it with my entire audience. I felt connected. That would be my word right now.
Great.
I felt connected. That was beautiful. Thank you. I'm still havening.
Good.
It's hard for me to stop. Folks out there, I hope you're getting an opportunity. The cool thing is that once you teach people the 3 havening touches, which obviously Dr. Ruden started out doing it with the arms, which is the havening touch, like you're giving yourself a hug, or you can do it like you're washing your hands, or on your face, like you're giving yourself a wonderful facial. Those 3 kinds of touches can really be done in any kind of dance. You know, you can do 1, or you can do all 3 or 2. But once you have that, it's just hearing the voice is really all you need, because you have the tools right here, right?
Yep.
Your hands.
Yeah,
That was beautiful.
We call these hand-ibiotics.
Instead of antibiotics. See, there's the humor. Can't get away from one. I can't get away from a conversation without seeing and hearing a good Dr. Ruden joke. That's good. I like that. So, in closing, I'd love to hold space for you to share a final thought with listeners of Holistically Speaking. What would you like to say?
I would say that it is time for us to all take control of our own destinies. It is not, we should not expect someone else to remove our stress. This is all within us, and we need all of us to be able to share in that way and own our own space and our own being. We are the creators of our destiny, and we are the creators of our truth, and we are the creators of our reality. So take responsibility and know that you can change.
Yeah. You can put the power of the emotional well-being in your own hands, literally.
And just as another note, well-being is insufficient, by the way, because well-being is a noun. So what we have to do is we have to make it into a verb. So it's active well-being, and that we seek well-being in everything that we do, in our family, in our work, in our relationships, in ourselves. So it is an active process, not a point of and by itself.
Meaning not a destination, but a constant work in progress.
It is a place from which we come.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I learned something, or I learned many things today that I don't think I knew just in the time that I've been working within this field. But I loved hearing the story of how it came about. I'm sure our listeners were very curious to that as well. And yeah, I like to geek out with you too. That was fun. So to listeners, we'll put the link in on the podcast page to share more about the conference. Hope you will join us. But if you are looking to find out more and learn more about how havening can truly help you on your own healing journey. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You can learn more about havening techniques by visiting the website. The link is on the podcast page. And if you're interested in joining me, Dr. Ruden, and others for the Canvas of Love Havening Conference, June 11th through the 13th, click the special link available exclusively to Holistically Speaking listeners. I hope to see you there. And if you would like to work with me personally and learn more about how I can support you on your journey to be kind to your mind with havening techniques, just set up a complimentary discovery call on my website at hilaryrusso.com/havening. You can also drop me a message on social media, Clubhouse, and LinkedIn at Hilary Russo. I'd love to connect. And if you think this episode of Holistically Speaking will resonate with someone you know, consider sharing it. Let's pay it forward in kindness and support each other in healing. Holistically Speaking is produced by Alan Seals with music by Lipbone Redding. Thanks for listening. And as always, be kind to your mind and don't forget to laugh.